The war room was silent. Commander Tejo stood at attention among the other officers, but he could feel the stares. The aliens around the long table looked at him like he was a child who had wandered into an adult conversation. Some looked at him with pity, others with barely hidden contempt. The holographic display showed the outer rim in red, entire solar systems marked with the symbol that everyone feared. The Devourers had come. "The decision is clear," said High Chancellor Vornath. The tall, blue-skinned Arkelian leader's voice echoed in the chamber. "We must pull back our forces, consolidate our defenses around the core worlds. We cannot waste resources on territories we cannot hold." Tejo's jaw tightened. Those territories included human colonies, 3 worlds where 5 million people lived. His people. "With respect, Chancellor," Tejo said, his voice steady despite his anger. "Those are not just territories. Those are lives. Citizens of the Union." Vornath's eyes fixed on him. "Commander Tejo, your species has been part of this Union for only 15 years. You do not understand the scale of what we face. The Devourers have destroyed civilizations that lasted 10,000 years. We must think strategically." "Strategically," Tejo repeated. The word tasted bitter. "You mean we abandoned 5 million people to save ourselves?" A Velkari officer across the table, a being named Theln with 4 eyes and silver skin, spoke up. "The human does not understand. This is not abandonment. This is survival. We have fought the Devourers for 3 years. We know they cannot be stopped with noble gestures." "Noble gestures," Tejo said. "Is that what you call defending our people?" "Your people fight with projectile weapons," another officer said. This one was a Korith, insect-like with a clicking voice, with chemical explosives and metal bullets. "Such primitive technology. Your ships are slow. Your tactics are outdated. What can humanity possibly do against the Devourers that we cannot?" The room murmured in agreement. Tejo had heard this before. Humanity was the youngest species in the Galactic Union. When they joined, the other races had been amused by human technology. Humans still used kinetic weapons, railguns and missiles, while other species had moved to plasma and particle beams centuries ago. Human ships were built with thick armor instead of energy shields. Human soldiers wore heavy suits instead of light combat skins. To the galaxy, humanity looked backward, primitive, weak. "Permission to speak, Commander?" a voice said behind Tejo. Admiral Hyun stepped forward. The older man's face was weathered, his hair gray, but his eyes were sharp. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Korean Republic Space Navy, with quiet pride. As the senior human officer present, his words carried weight. "Admiral," Vornath acknowledged. "The Council is right about one thing," Hyun said calmly. "Humanity is new to this war. We are new to the stars. But we are not new to fighting." He paused, looking at each alien face in turn. "We have fought each other for thousands of years on our homeworld. We know war. We know sacrifice. And we know one thing that I think this council has forgotten." "And what is that?" Vornath asked. "That there are things worth dying for." The room was silent. "The council can pull back if it wishes," Hyun continued. "That is your right. But the human fleet will not abandon the outer rim. We will not leave those people to die. Not while we still have ships that can fly and people who can fight." "Admiral Hyun," Vornath said, and now there was something almost like sadness in his voice. "The Devourer fleet approaching the outer rim numbers over 200 ships. Your entire fleet in that sector is 23 vessels. This is not courage. This is suicide." "Perhaps," Hyun said. "But it is our choice to make." Tejo felt pride surge in his chest. This was why he served. This was what it meant to be human. Theln, the Velkari officer, leaned forward. "I do not understand. Why do you do this? You will die. Your ships will be destroyed. The colonies will fall anyway. What do you gain?" Hyun looked at the alien officer for a long moment. "Time," he said simply. Every hour we hold gives those people a chance to evacuate. Every minute we fight gives them hope. And maybe, just maybe, that is worth more than all the advanced weapons in the galaxy. Vorneth stood. The Council's decision stands. We pull back to defensive positions. Admiral Hyun, if you choose to commit your fleet to this action, you do so without Union support. The responsibility and the consequences are yours alone. Understood, Hyun said. You are dismissed. As the council chamber emptied, Taeho walked beside his admiral through the corridors of the Union flagship. Other officers passed them. Alien beings of a dozen different species. Some nodded with respect, others looked away. A few looked at them like they were already dead. Admiral, Taeho said quietly, can we actually hold them? Hyun was quiet for a moment. No, he said honestly. Not forever. Maybe not even for long. But we can hold them long enough. Long enough for the evacuation ships to arrive. Long enough for those people to get away. And then we do what humans have always done, Taeho. We fight. We bleed. And we make damn sure that anyone who survives remembers what we gave for them. They reached the docking bay, where the shuttle waited to take them back to the human fleet. Before boarding, Taeho looked back. Through a viewport, he could see the massive Union fleet arrayed in space. Thousands of ships with their sleek hulls and glowing energy fields. Beautiful, advanced, perfect. But they were leaving. All that power, all that technology, and they were choosing to run. The human fleet was different. 23 ships, old designs with welded armor plates and weapon systems that other species considered ancient. But those ships were heading toward the danger, not away from it. Taeho climbed aboard the shuttle. As it pulled away from the Union flagship, he could see the stars ahead. Somewhere out there in the darkness, the Devourers were coming. A wave of death and destruction that had swallowed worlds. And humanity was going to stand in their way. The shuttle accelerated toward the human fleet, and Taeho allowed himself a grim smile. Maybe they were primitive. Maybe they were weak. Maybe they were going to die. But they were going to fight. And that, Taeho thought, was what made them human. The alarms screamed through every corridor of Kairos Station. Captain Suji gripped the armrest of her command chair as the destroyer Time's indomitable Times shuddered from another hit. Through the viewport, she could see them coming. Hundreds of devourer ships, dark and twisted things that looked like they had been grown rather than built. Status report, Suji said, her voice calm despite the chaos. Shields at 40%. Her tactical officer replied. The Times Daejeon Times and Times Busan Times are heavily damaged. The Times Gwangju Times is gone. 4 ships lost already. They had been fighting for 3 hours. Evacuation status? 42% complete. 4 million people still on the ground and on the station. The civilian transports need more time. Time. Always time. That was what they were buying with their lives. All ships, this is Captain Suji. Formation Echo 3. We fall back to grid 7 to 7. Make them chase us through the debris field. She paused. And someone get me Lieutenant Jiwon's squadron. I need those fighters to run interference. Across the battlefield, in the cold of space, Lieutenant Jiwon pushed her fighter through a tight roll. Energy blasts from Devourer interceptors streaked past her cockpit. Her squadron, 12 fighters that had started as 36, stayed tight on her wing. Phoenix leader to all birds, Jiwon said into her comm. Target the carrier's launch bays. Make them pay for every fighter they send out. Her console lit up with warnings. 3 Devourer interceptors on her tail. She dove toward a piece of shattered station hull, using it as cover, then pulled up hard. Her railgun spun up, and she fired. Solid tungsten rounds, primitive by galactic standards, but moving at a significant fraction of light speed. One of the pursuing fighters exploded. 2 more on you, Phoenix leader, her wingman called. I see them, Jiwon said. Her hands moved across the controls. She couldn't outrun them. Her fighter was damaged, fuel low, and she was tired. So tired. but she could see the evacuation ships in the distance. Massive civilian transports, fat and slow and completely defenseless. Packed full of families, children, people who deserved a chance to live. She made her decision. Phoenix Squadron, this is leader. Break off and cover the transports. I'm going to give you an opening. Negative, leader. You need backup. That's an order, Jiwan said quietly. Then she switched to the fleet channel. Captain Suji, this is Phoenix leader. I'm making a run on the Devourer carrier. Tell my sister I'm sorry I'll miss her wedding. Before Suji could respond, Jiwan cut the channel and aimed her fighter at the massive Devourer hive carrier. It was the size of a city, covered in organic armor and weapon ports. Her fighter was tiny in comparison. Insignificant, she armed her ship's reactor for overload and pushed the engines to maximum. On the Times' indomitable asterisk, Suji watched her display as the small blue dot, representing Jiwan's fighter, accelerated toward the carrier. She understood immediately what the young pilot was doing. No, Suji whispered. Don't do it, but she knew Jiwan would. Because that was what humans did. They gave everything. Jiwan's fighter dodged through defensive fire. Explosions bloomed around her. Her ship screamed warnings at her. But she ignored them all. 200 meters. 100. 50. She thought of her sister. Her parents. Her friends. She thought of the people on those evacuation ships who would never know her name. 20 meters. For Earth, she said. The fighter punched into the carrier's launch bay and the reactor went critical. The explosion tore through the internal structure of the massive ship. Secondary detonations rippled across its hull as fuel and ammunition cooked off. The carrier broke apart in a flower of fire. 12 Devourer squadrons died with it. The pressure on the evacuation ships eased. Suji closed her eyes for just a moment. Then she opened them and returned to the battle. Jiwan had bought them time. She couldn't waste it. All ships, concentrate fire on the western flank, drive them back. The human fleet fought like cornered wolves. When their energy weapons ran dry, they used missiles. When missiles were gone, they used railguns. When a ship was too damaged to fight, it positioned itself as a shield for vessels that still could. Admiral Hyun's flagship, the Times Incheon asterisk, held the center of the formation. The old battleship had taken dozens of hits. Fires burned in 3 decks. Half the crew was dead or wounded, but Hyun stood on his bridge, directing the battle with the calm of someone who had already accepted his fate. Admiral, the Devourers are trying to break through to the station, Commander Taeho reported. His face on the comm screen was covered in soot and blood from a console explosion. Pull the Times Jeju Times and Times Mokpo Times back to block them, Hyun ordered. We hold the line. Sir, those ships are barely functional. Then they'll make excellent barricades, Hyun said grimly. Every minute we hold is another 1,000 people evacuated. Do it. The battle raged on. The human ships moved with desperate creativity, using tactics no other species would consider. The destroyer Times, Ulsan Times, deliberately rammed a Devourer cruiser, both ships dying in the collision. The Times Pohang Times used its last missile to detonate a debris field, creating a cloud of shrapnel that shredded a dozen enemy fighters. On Cairo Station, the last civilians crowded into evacuation ships. Parents carried children. The old helped the young. Humans and aliens together, united in their terror and their hope. Theln, the Velkari officer who had questioned humanity's decision, was on one of those evacuation ships. He watched through a viewport as the human fleet fought. He had never seen anything like it. They were losing. They were dying, but they were not running. One of the human ships, its hull split open and atmosphere venting, turned toward a cluster of Devourer vessels. It was the Times Incheon asterisk, Admiral Hyun's flagship. Theln watched as the dying battleship opened fire with every weapon it had left. The message that came across all channels was Hyun's voice, calm and strong even at the end. This is Admiral Hyun to all Union forces. We have held for 19 hours. The evacuation is complete. 4 million souls are safe. There was a pause. It has been an honor to serve. We held. That's all that matters. The Times, Incheon Times, fired its engines one last time, driving forward into the Devourer formation. The explosion lit up the darkness like a new star. When the Union fleet finally arrived, they found only 7 human ships still functional. 7 out of 23. Floating among the debris were the remains of over 100 Devourer vessels. The human fleet had been outnumbered 10-1, and they had made the enemy pay dearly for every meter of space. And every single civilian had escaped. 4 million lives saved. Theln stood in the evacuation ship, staring at the wreckage. Around him, people were crying. Humans mourning their defenders, aliens mourning alongside them, many for the first time understanding what they had witnessed. It wasn't technology that had held the line. It wasn't advanced weapons or superior ships. It was something else. Something the galaxy had forgotten. It was humans. 3 months after Kairos Station, the galaxy was different. Not in the way planets moved or stars burned, but in the way people thought. The way they looked at humans. Marine medic Do-hyun crouched in the trench, hands working quickly to seal a wound on a Velkari soldier's chest. The mining world of Tarkos 3 shook with artillery fire. Somewhere above, ships fought in orbit. Down here in the mud and smoke, Do-hyun focused on keeping people alive. "You're going to be fine," Do-hyun told the wounded Velkari. His translator chip converted his words into the clicking, musical language of their species. "Just stay still," Do-hyun told. "Just stay still." "Human," the Velkari soldier gasped. "Why help me?" "You're kind. We did not help you at Kairos." Do-hyun pressed medical foam into the wound and sealed it with a bonding patch. "That was then. This is now. Besides, we're on the same side, right?" An explosion rocked the trench. Dirt rained down on them. Do-hyun's squad leader, Corporal Minho, slid down beside him. "Medical? We need to move," Minho said. "Commander Telreth is ordering a full retreat." The Devourers broke through the eastern defensive line. "Telreth," Do-hyun looked at the wounded around him. 23 soldiers, human and alien. 2 injured to walk. Some were missing limbs. Others had chest wounds or head trauma. Moving them would take time. Time they didn't have. "What about the wounded?" Do-hyun asked. Minho's face was grim. "Orders are to fall back. Anyone who can walk, walks. Anyone who can't." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Do-hyun stood. His medical armor was covered in mud and blood. He looked at the wounded soldiers, at their faces filled with pain and fear. Then he looked at Minho. "I'm not leaving them," Do-hyun said quietly. "That's not your call to make," Minho replied. "Yes, it is. I'm the medic. These are my patients." Do-hyun checked his weapon, a standard assault rifle. "You can report me if we survive." "But I'm staying." Minho stared at him. Then, slowly, he smiled. "You humans are crazy. You know that?" He raised his voice. "First squad. Second squad. Form a perimeter. We're setting up a defensive position right here." "Corporal." "The order was to retreat," a human private said. "Yeah, well, the medic's staying, and I'm not leaving him alone," Minho said. "Anyone got a problem with that?" Silence. Then, one by one, the human soldiers moved into position. 32 Marines, setting up to defend 23 wounded. What happened next surprised everyone. The Velkari soldiers, the ones who could still fight, stopped retreating. Their squad leaders looked at each other, then at the humans. Without words, they turned around and headed back toward the defensive line. Commander Telreth, the Velkari officer in charge, demanded to know what was happening. When he learned that human soldiers had refused to abandon the wounded, and that his own troops had followed their example, he was furious. He personally came to the trench to restore order, but when he arrived and saw Do-hyun working on a wounded Velkari soldier while explosions lit up the sky, when he saw humans and Velkari fighting side by side to protect those who couldn't fight, something in him changed. "How long can you hold?" Telreth asked Minho. "As long as we need to, sir," Minho replied. Telreth looked at the defensive position. Then he activated his comm. All units. This is Commander Telreth. We are not retreating. Reform the defensive line. We hold this position. Sir, we'll be surrounded, one of his officers protested. Then we fight surrounded, Telreth said. The humans have shown us something we forgot. Honor is not about winning. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice. They held for 6 hours. 6 brutal hours of constant combat. The Devourers threw wave after wave at them. But the humans fought with a ferocity that inspired the Velkari, and the Velkari, seeing their own kind defended by aliens who owed them nothing, fought harder than they ever had before. When Union reinforcements finally arrived, they found a miracle. The defensive position had held. 200 wounded soldiers, both human and alien, survived. 32 human Marines had become 200 defenders, because others chose to stand with them. The footage from Tarkos 3 spread across the Union networks. Combined with the recordings from Kairos Station, it created something unprecedented. A movement. A change in how species viewed each other. And how they viewed humans. At the Union Assembly, diplomat Nari stood before the gathered representatives. She was young, barely 30. But she carried the weight of her species with quiet dignity. Behind her, holographic displays showed images from Kairos and Tarkos. Human ships dying to save civilians. Human soldiers refusing to leave the wounded. Members of the Assembly, Nari began. For 3 months, I have heard your praise. Your admiration. Your calls for human military advisors and training programs. And while we appreciate the recognition, I think you misunderstand what you witnessed. The chamber was silent. Humans did not do anything special at Kairos Station or on Tarkos 3, Nari continued. We did not employ secret tactics or advanced strategies. We simply did what we have always done. We refused to leave people behind. We chose to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. She paused, looking across the assembled aliens. You call us brave. You call us honorable. But the truth is simpler. We don't fight because we're strong. We fight because someone has to. We don't stand our ground because we're certain of victory. We stand because the alternative is to run, and running means people die. A Velkari delegate stood. It was Theln, the officer who had questioned humanity at the War Council before Kairos. He looked different now. Older. Somehow. Changed. Delegate Nari, Theln said. On behalf of the Velkari people, I wish to formally request human military advisors for our forces. We have forgotten what it means to fight with honor. We wish to learn again. One by one, other delegates stood. The Arkelians. The Korith. Species that had viewed humanity as primitive, now asked to learn from them. Nari felt tears in her eyes, but she held them back. The human delegation accepts, but understand this. We will not teach you how to be more like us. We will teach you how to be the best version of yourselves. Because that's what this war demands. Not human tactics. Not alien technology. But all of us. Together. Fighting for what matters. The assembly erupted in approval. For the first time in the 3-year war, the Union truly felt united. In a medical bay on a Union cruiser, Do-hyun sat beside a recovering Velkari soldier. The alien looked at him with all 4 eyes. Why did you stay? The soldier asked. On Tarkos. Why risk your life for us? Do-hyun thought about it. Because, he said finally, someone had to. And I was there. The Velkari considered this. That is a very human answer. Maybe, Do-hyun said with a small smile. Or maybe it's just the right answer. 1 year into the war, Commander Wonho checked his equipment one last time. The small ship's cargo bay was cramped, filled with soldiers from 7 different species. This was First Contact Force, the Union's first integrated special operations unit. Humans, Velkari, Arkelians, Korith, and others. Different worlds, different bodies, but one purpose. 5 minutes to drop zone. the pilot announced. Wonho looked at his team. Beside him stood Theln, the Velkari officer who had witnessed Kairos station. The alien's 4 eyes met his 2, and Theln nodded. They had trained together for 6 months, bled together, learned to trust each other. Listen up, Wonho said. His voice was calm, but every soldier heard the weight behind it. We all know the mission. Deep behind Devourer lines, there's a nexus. Intelligence says it's a command hub, coordinating fleet movements across 3 sectors. We capture it. We get access to their entire network. We learn where they come from, where they're going, everything. And if we cannot capture it? Asked Krell, a massive Korath warrior with blade arms and compound eyes. Then we destroy it. Wonho said simply. Either way, we slow them down. Buy our fleets time to regroup. The Devourers will have heavy defenses, Theln said. We are 12 soldiers attacking a fortified position. The odds are not favorable. Wonho smiled. When have the odds ever been favorable? We go anyway. The ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of a dead world. Once, this planet had been home to billions. Now, it was a Devourer processing center, stripped of resources and life. The Nexus was buried deep in what used to be a city. 30 seconds, the pilot called. The team stood and checked their gear. Each soldier carried weapons suited to their species. The humans had their kinetic rifles and explosives. The Velkari had plasma cutters. The Korath carried blade weapons that were part of their own bodies. Different tools, same goal. Remember, Wonho said, we stick together. No one gets left behind. That's the rule. The human rule, Theln corrected with something that might have been amusement. The first contact force rule, Wonho said. We all follow it now. The cargo door opened, and they dropped into the darkness. The infiltration went smoothly at first. They moved through the ruined city, using stealth and precision. The training had worked. Each species understood the other's capabilities. They moved like one organism with 12 parts. But at the Nexus entrance, everything went wrong. The Devourers were waiting. Not dozens. Hundreds. The facility was a trap. Fall back, Wonho ordered. But Devourer warriors poured from side passages, cutting off their retreat. The team formed a circle, back to back, firing in all directions. We're surrounded, Theln reported unnecessarily. Then we go forward, Wonho decided. Into the Nexus. It's the only way. They fought their way inside, through corridors of twisted organic metal. Devourer defenders fell, but so did 2 members of First Contact Force. An Arkelian named Solith died, buying them time to breach a sealed door. A Korath soldier named Drax sacrificed himself to collapse a tunnel behind them. The survivors reached the Nexus core. It was a massive chamber filled with pulsing biological computers. Veins of data flowing through walls of living tissue. This was the brain of the Devourer operation in this sector. Set the charges, Wonho ordered. We're bringing this place down. Wait, said Liss, their tech specialist. A Velkari with 6 thin fingers perfect for delicate work. I can access the system. Download their data. This could tell us everything. How long? Wonho asked. 10 minutes. Maybe more. We don't have 10 minutes, Theln said, firing at Devourer warriors entering the chamber. They're coming from all sides. Wonho made the decision instantly. Liss, you download. Everyone else, we hold this room. No matter what followed was the longest 10 minutes of their lives. The team positioned themselves at the chamber's entrances, creating a wall of bodies and weapons. The Devourers came in waves, throwing themselves at the defenders with mindless fury. Krell the Korath fell, his blade arms cutting down 3 Devourers even as their claws tore him apart. A human soldier named Yunseo took shrapnel, meant for Theln, dying with a smile on her face. The survivors fought with everything they had, buying seconds that turned into minutes. Got it, Liss finally shouted. Data is downloaded. We can go. Plant the charges, Wonho ordered. Blow this place and let's... A Devourer warrior, larger than the others, burst through a wall. It moved impossibly fast. Its claw struck Wanho across the chest, sending him flying. He hit the ground hard, feeling ribs crack. Blood filled his mouth. The devourer moved toward him for the killing blow. Theln threw himself between them. His plasma cutter flared, cutting across the devourer's face. The creature roared and struck Theln aside. But the distraction gave Wanho time to raise his rifle and fire. The devourer fell. Wanho tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work. "Theln," he coughed. "Get them out. Complete the mission." "No," Theln said. The Velkari was badly wounded, one arm hanging useless, but he moved to Wanho's side. "You taught us, remember? No one gets left behind." "That's not," Wanho started. "The human rule," Theln interrupted. "Now it's everyone's rule." The Velkari grabbed Wanho and pulled him up, draping the human commander over his shoulders. Despite his injuries, despite the pain, Theln carried him. The remaining team members fought a running battle back through the facility. They set charges as they went, leaving a trail of explosives. When they reached the extraction point, only 7 of the 12 soldiers remained. Theln gently laid Wanho in the ship's cargo bay. The human's vision was fading, but he saw Theln's face above him. "We held the line," Wanho whispered. "Just like heroes." "Yes," Theln said. "You humans taught us what that means. To hold the line, to never leave anyone behind. We understand now." The ship lifted off as the Nexus exploded behind them. The data they had recovered showed everything. Devourer fleet positions, supply lines, and most importantly, the location of their home system, the place where they came from. In the Union Command Center, Admiral Salmon reviewed the intelligence. She was a stern woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had lost family at Kairos. She had lost friends on a dozen worlds. Now, finally, they had a target. "Gather the fleet," she said. "Every ship. Every species. We're ending this." The order went out across the Union. For the first time in history, all 47 member species contributed their forces. Not because they were ordered to. Because they chose to. Because humans had shown them that some things were worth fighting for. In the medical bay, Wanho woke to find Theln sitting beside his bed. The Velkari looked tired, but alive. "You saved me," Wanho said. "You saved me first," Theln replied. "At Tarkos. At a dozen other places. You humans have been saving us since Kairos. It was time we returned the favor." Wanho smiled. "Not humans anymore. First Contact Force. We're all in this together now." "Yes," Theln agreed. Together, the largest fleet in galactic history gathered in the void between stars. 10,000 ships from 47 different species, all united under one banner. Admiral Salmon stood on the bridge of the Union flagship Times Unity Asterisk, looking at the holographic display showing the massive armada. "Final status report," she said. "All fleets report ready," Commander Tejo replied. He had been promoted after Kairos, and now served as her chief tactical officer. "The Velkari 3rd Fleet is in position. Arkelian 2nd Fleet confirms ready. Human forces across all sectors report green." Salmon nodded. Ahead lay the Devourer home system. 5 planets, 3 of them completely consumed, converted into breeding grounds for more Devourers. At the center was the Queen ship, a massive organic construct the size of a moon. Intelligence said if they killed the Queen, the entire Devourer network would collapse. It was simple. It was impossible. It was the only chance they had. "All ships," Salmon said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Salmon. For 3 years, we have fought and died. We have lost worlds and people we loved. But we have also learned something. We have learned what it means to stand together. To fight not just for our own species, but for all life in the galaxy." She paused, thinking of Kairos, of Admiral Hyun and Lieutenant Jiwon, and all the others who had given everything. "Today we end this war," she continued. "Today we show the Devourers that life will always triumph over death. That unity is stronger than hunger. All ships, advance, and may whatever gods you believe in be with us all. The armada moved forward as one. The devourers met them at the edge of the system. Thousands of ships. A swarm of death that had consumed 100 worlds. The two fleets collided in an explosion of fire and fury. Captain Jiho, commanding the carrier Time Soul's Pride *, directed his fighter squadrons with precision. He was Suji's younger brother, and he fought with the same determination that had made her a hero at Kairos. All squadrons, focus on the command ships, Jiho ordered. Take out their coordination, and they'll fall apart. But the devourers fought with desperate intensity. This was their home, their birthplace. They would defend it with everything they had. The Time Soul's Pride times shook from multiple hits. Jiho's damage control teams worked frantically to seal hull breaches and restore systems. But the hits kept coming. A Devourer heavy cruiser locked onto them, its weapons charging for a killing blow. Brace for impact, Jiho's tactical officer shouted. But the killing blow never came. A Valkyrie destroyer threw itself between the Time Soul's Pride times and the cruiser. Taking the hit meant for the carrier. The Valkyrie ship broke apart, but its sacrifice bought the carrier time to evade. This is Valkyrie ship times redemption *, came a voice over the comm. Jiho recognized it as Theln, the officer who had witnessed Kairos. We hold the line, Captain. That is what humans taught us. Now go. Complete your mission. Jiho felt his throat tighten. Thank you, Commander. No, Theln replied. Thank you for showing us the way. Throughout the battle, the same scene repeated. Ships from all species protecting each other. Sacrificing for each other. The unity that humanity had sparked with their actions had spread like fire through the fleet. They were no longer 47 different species. They were one people. Fighting for survival. At the center of the battle, Admiral Salmon directed the assault on the Queen ship. It was massive beyond comprehension, covered in weapons and armor grown from organic matter. Thousands of Devourer fighters swarmed around it, like insects protecting their hive. We need to break through their defensive screen, Salmon said. Get me a path to that Queen ship. Admiral, Tejo said quietly. The Time Soul's Pride times has taken critical damage. Captain Jiho is requesting permission for a ramming run. He says his carrier can't fight anymore, but it can still fly. Salmon's blood ran cold. Another sacrifice. Another human choosing to die so others could live. It was what they did. It was what made them human. But also, denied, Salmon said firmly. Tell Jiho to fall back. We'll find another way. Admiral, there might not be another way, Tejo said. If he rams the Queen ship at full speed, the explosion could, I said denied. Salmon's voice cut through the bridge. Then softer. No more sacrifices. We've given enough. But even as she said it, she watched Jiho's carrier on the tactical display. It was accelerating, heading straight for the Queen ship. He was going to do it anyway. Jiho, stand down, Salmon ordered. That is a direct command. I'm sorry, Admiral, Jiho's voice came back. But this is the only way. My ship is finished. But my death can still mean something. For Kairos. For all of us. The Times, Soul's Pride times plowed through the Devourer defensive line, engines pushed beyond their limits. Jiho could see the Queen ship growing larger in his viewport. 200 kilometers. 100? 50? He thought about his sister, Suji, who had died at Kairos holding the line. He thought about all the humans and aliens who had given their lives in this war. Soon he would join them. 20 kilometers. Then something appeared on his sensors. Ships. Dozens of them, hundreds, from every species in the Union. They were forming up around the Time Soul's Pride *, creating a protective screen. Captain Jiho, a Korath captain said over the comm, you will not die today, not alone. We are with you. All ships, this is Valkyrie command, another voice added. Protect the Times Soul's Pride *. That carrier has earned the right to survive. They came from all directions. Velkari destroyers, Arkelian cruisers, Korath fighters, even damaged ships that could barely fly, threw themselves into the defensive formation. They absorbed the fire meant for Jiho's carrier. They died so he could live. No, Jiho whispered. No, you don't have to. Yes, an Arkelian commander interrupted. We do. You humans taught us that sacrifice means something. But you also taught us that some lives are worth saving. Yours is one of them. Now finish this fight. With the path cleared by the sacrifices of 100 ships from a dozen species, the Times Soul's Pride Times closed to weapons range of the Queen ship. Not for ramming. For one final strike. All remaining weapons, fire, Jiho ordered. The carrier launched everything it had left. Missiles, torpedoes, railgun rounds. The combined firepower of the entire fleet focused on one spot. Guided by the intelligence First Contact Force had recovered. The Queen's weak point. The Queen ship's armor cracked. Then, shattered. The explosion that followed consumed the massive vessel, tearing it apart from within. Without the Queen, the Devourer fleet began to collapse. Ships drifted aimlessly. Others collided with each other. The hive mind that had coordinated them was gone. The battle was over. The war was won. 20 years later, Nari stood at a memorial station called The Stand that orbited where Cairo Station once fought. She was old now. Her hair gray, her face lined with age, but her eyes were still sharp. Before her stood rows of young officers from every species in the Union, graduates, about to join the fleet. They all wore the same uniform, regardless of their world of origin. They were all children of the peace that had been bought with blood. You stand here today, Nari said, her voice carrying across the chamber, because people from 47 worlds chose to stand together. You breathe because they fought. You have a future because they gave theirs. She gestured to the stars visible through the viewport. Humanity didn't teach the galaxy how to fight. We taught you why to fight. We taught you that some things matter more than technology or tactics. That honor means keeping your promises. That courage means standing when it would be easier to run. In the back of the chamber, two old soldiers stood side by side. Admiral Salmon, retired now, and Theln, the Velkari officer, who had witnessed it all from the beginning. They had become friends over the years. Brothers in arms, from different worlds. Do you think they understand? Theln asked quietly. Some will, Salmon replied. Some won't. But they'll learn. Just like you did. Theln's 4 eyes looked at her with something like amusement. You humans are still arrogant, even in peace. Maybe, Salmon smiled, but we earned it. On the memorial wall behind them, thousands of names were carved. Human names, alien names, all those who had died so others could live. At the top, in letters that caught the light, were words that had become the motto of the new Union fleet. To fight alongside humanity is to be celebrated and honored beyond worlds. But to earn humanity's trust is to understand what honor truly means. Nari finished her speech and watched the young officers file out. They would go to their ships. They would guard the borders. They would face new challenges, but they would do it together, united by the lessons learned in fire and blood. The war was over. But the peace was humanity's greatest victory. Not because they had won, but because they had shown the galaxy how to win together. And that, Nari thought as she looked at the stars, was worth every sacrifice.